Good morning, students. We are again with the French Revolution part 2. Already we have discussed about the French Revolution, the causes of French Revolution, the social cause, political cause, economic cause, and how the Bastille fort it was attacked by the common people, and how French France adopted the social monarchy. Okay, so the constitution it becomes and social monarchy and constitution becomes republic. So now we will discuss in details about the France abolishes monarchy and becomes republic. Okay, how France abolishes monarchy and becomes republic. So now they have adopted the democracy, and they understood what is the meaning of democracy, and this system of monarchy where one person was all in all, so they abolished this system. Okay, so here you see Louis XVI, he signed the constitution. Okay, and what was he signed, because he signed the constitution that he made secret negotiation with the kings of Prussia. So that was very much dangerous. He made a secret negotiation with the kings of Prussia, and rulers of the neighboring countries, they were very much worried because of the developments of France. What were the developments that regarding war? Okay, so plans was made to put down the events, and finally we have seen that National Assembly declared war against Prussia and Russia. Okay, now there was a patriotic song known as Marseillaise, composed by the poet Roger de L'Elsley. It was sung first time by the volunteers who marched into Paris. Okay, it was considered as the national anthem of France. So this thing you have to learn about the patriotic song, who composed it, and it was the first time the volunteers sung it, which was considered as the national anthem of France. Now, as you know, when the war will be there will be losses of life, and people will face the difficulties. The same thing happened with France, and then finally Constitution of 1791, it gave political rights to the rich people. Okay, so this was very much unfair. Why the rich people will get the political rights? Then political club at that time became very much important. Now among these political club, the most successful club was Jacobins. The Jacobins club was considered as the most successful club. The leader of this Jacobins club was Maximilien Robespierre. Okay, now members of this club were less prosperous. They were not very rich. The Jacobins club members were not so much rich, not of very high status. They consisted of small shopkeepers, artisans, printers, servants, etc. So in this club, the main theme was the revolt against the people of Paris, especially the high class people. The revolt against those people who were enjoying the rights. So the assembly voted to imprison the royal family. Now, as soon as that, the assembly now imprisoned the royal family who did the injustice. Now elections were held. Newly elected assembly was known as convection, and it was held in 1792. What was there? What was the main aim of this assembly? It abolished monarchy and France gained the republic. So slowly you see how France from monarchy changes into republic. Next we are coming to the reign of terror. Now as you have seen, it is from period from 1793 to 1794. This period is known as the regime of terror or reign of terror. Now here the leader Robespierre, he followed a very strict decision. Okay, people at first he used to be against the higher class people, and he looked after the lower class, looked about the facilities of the lower class people. So the common people, the middle class people, they thought that Robespierre would look after their demands. But slowly and silently, what happened when he became as a leader, he followed some severe control, okay, and punishment, whom that the ex-noble clergy enemies of became the enemies of the republic. Now whenever the person who were ex-noble, the clergy, without any reason, they were considered as the enemy of the republic. And even the members of the other political party, even his own member, if they didn't accept Robespierre's decisions, they would be also punished very severely. Okay, they were even arrested, and the court would found him guilty. If any person who would be against Robespierre's decision, the court would found him guilty. Okay, and guillotined him. Guillotined him like the animal sacrifices we do. We put the neck of the animal in the wood, and the same way those people who were found guilty, they will be guillotined to death. And there was maximum ceiling on wages and prices. The prices were fixed by the Robespierre, and the wages was also fixed. Then what happened? The bread, meat, all these were rationed. Okay, and peasants, they forced to sell grains to the cities fixed prices by the government. Now the peasants, they sold the grains, but the prices were fixed by the government. Now we are coming to the directory rules of France. What was the directory rules of France? A new constitution denied the vote to non-propertied sections. 2 elected legislative councils were there. These were appointed a director. Now this new constitution was formed. It denied the vote to non-propertied sections. Those who are lower class, they denied vote. So 2 elected legislative councils were there, and it appointed a directory. A directory consists of what? It consists of an executive which made of 5 members. Now these directors have always clashed with the legislative council, so it sought to dismiss them. So there was always a clash between these two views, director's view and legislative council's view. Then political instability of the directory led to the rise of military dictator, that is Napoleon Bonaparte. So when such was the unstable condition, at that time the military dictator Napoleon Bonaparte came to the power. Next comes revolution of women. Now the women's participation. Active participants, women in the events, brought about changes in French society. Now women became active participant, okay, and they hoped to pressurize the revolutionary government to improve their lives. So these the women who were not given any rights, who would not enjoy the rights, they thought that if it is now the time to pressurize the government so that our conditions should improve. Now most women were belong to the third estate. These women, their works were what? Seamstresses. Seamstresses are those who sew clothes, okay, and laundresses, those who do ironing of clothes, cleaning of clothes, those. So these were their main job of those women. They earned their living by doing this, or sold flowers, fruits, vegetables at market. So these were the most women who does, third estate woman does these types of work to meet their living. Next comes working women. These working women, they although they earn money, and in spite of that they have to take care of the family members, children, and these women were very much disappointed with the constitution of 1971 that reduced them to passive citizens. They were not considered as active citizens but passive citizens. Now revolutionary government introduced laws. These laws improved their lives. Schooling compulsory, it became for the women. There are some improvements then made, that schooling was becoming compulsory for girls and they would not be married against their will. Okay, then making divorce was becoming legal. Next we are coming to that during the reign of terror, a new government just closed women's club and banned the political activities. But in 1947, women in France owned the right to vote. So you see, slowly and slowly the conditions of women were also improving. Next we are seeing abolition of slavery. Now slave trade, it was considered in the 17th century was the most important slave trade. Okay. Now colonies in Caribbean, Martinique and Guadeloupe and San Domingo, they were the important suppliers of commodities like tobacco, sugar, indigo, coffee. Okay. And here there were no laborers for doing all this work. So slaves were bought, and they were bought by the local chieftains, and it makes a triangular slave between a triangular form it was made between Europe, Africa and America. This slave trade was traveled in a triangular form between Europe, Africa and America. Now these slaves were passed in a very bad way, in a packed, they were very packed tightly. They were traveled in a very in a very unscientific way. They were packed tightly 3 months in a ship in a long voyage, okay, across the Atlantic to Caribbean. There to plantation owners, and then they were reached to the their place, okay, the plantation owners' place. Then this about the slave trade, there was long debate in National Assembly, okay, for the rights of the man to be extended to all French subjects. But this was not passed as law. Why? Due to the fear from the opposition of businessmen. Okay, because it was a very much highly profit for the businessmen. The businessmen got high profit by this slave trade. So they were afraid. The assembly found very much, was feared to find any law for the stop for the abolition of slave trade. Finally, slavery was abolished in French colonies in 1848. Next, coming to the rise of Napoleon Bonaparte. Now in 1804, Napoleon Bonaparte was crowned as an emperor of France, and he conquered the neighboring countries, and he created kingdoms by placing his family members there. He extended his kingdom, he conquered various areas, and there he placed his family members. He acted as a role as his part was a role as a modernizer of Europe. Okay, he was acting as a modernizer of Europe and introduced many laws. Okay, protection of private property. Okay, uniform system of weight and measure by decimal system. All this he introduced, how to measure properly by putting in decimal system. So many people at first, they were very much pleased. Many people saw him as a liberator. Bring freedom for the people. Liberator, those who will liberate the people, will make the people free. But his armies became to be viewed as an invading force. Okay, now his armies were not good, and they were in the tendency to invade. So finally, Napoleon Bonaparte was defeated at Waterloo in 1850. So next, the last one we are coming is the legacy of French Revolution. Now in this legacy, the important is that ideas of democracy and liberty are the important features of the legacy. Okay, important legacy of French Revolution. And this idea, this equality, liberty, this spread to the rest of the European countries during the 19th century. Okay, and this feudal system, it was abolished. Now colonized people, they reworked again the idea of freedom to create a sovereign state. So the people, those colonized people, they again reworked to get the idea of freedom and to make a sovereign state. And Tipu Sultan and Ram Mohan Roy, they are the two examples who responded to the ideas coming from revolutionary France. So these two names are very important, and from India, these two examples, they responded to the ideas that was coming from revolutionary France. From the French Revolution, they got the idea of freedom. Okay, the democracy. These ideas they came. Okay, I think you have understood the chapter. Go through the chapter very nicely and hope we will meet again in the next class with a new chapter. Thank you.